Hello everyone and welcome back to the Bards Tavern. My name's Rob and we are back with the second episode, which is in the nice timely. We managed to get it out inside of 2 years, so I think we're very proud. But I'm Rob and I'm joined by the lovely Paddy.
Hello.
And the beautiful Alistair as well.
A year older, but not wiser.
Exactly. I don't think our opinions are going to be any more or less informed than what we were a few years ago, which is not very much, but we appreciate everyone for coming to listen to us ramble, because we have no profile or relevance whatsoever. So if you've clicked on this randomly, welcome to the bottom of the barrel, I suppose.
You're better off picking up a shoe and putting it to your ear and just seeing if anything comes out of it.
Exactly.
I hear you
welcome.
the sea.
So what we're here to do today, today we're here to talk about what makes a great combat system in games, and this is kind of on the back of a YouTube video that we did probably about four, somewhere between 4 and 12 years ago,
2018,
where we did a top 7 list of the best combat in video games, and it's been one that was one of our most popular videos. Probably not the one we put the most effort in, but certainly it was the most popular. And we thought maybe for something to get in this kind of back into the swing of talking about games and doing this kind of doing our little podcast or doing kind of whatever, we thought this would be a nice easy kind of topic for us to ease ourselves kind of back in and do a combat system revisited in 2023 and see if maybe some of our opinions have changed, and really maybe go into a bit more kind of detail than what we did in that video, where we just kind of at a very kind of surface just kind of plopped 7 games out the air and put it into a video and didn't really give it a huge amount of thought, I think.
We got 48,000 views, so the people love us.
And
dare you
about
talk to me about that?
200 comments of people completely disagreeing with the list. I do love the fact as well, like we put a God of War in that list about a few months before the new 2018 God of War come out. So we reference God of War 3 as being one of the best comments. Then we get a bunch of comments saying, what about the new God of War? Just like, yeah. Anyway, that's maybe a podcast episode for another day where I can whinge about what people have said to me on
Agony
the internet. So, yeah, that's what we're going to get in today on the Bards Tavern. So thanks for joining us on our merry, what's a bardy word in a tavern I could use?
Drunken rambunctious adventures.
I should have turned to Paddy.
No, I could not have top rambunctious adventures. That's the winner.
Oh, I missed you guys. Right. So how are we going to do this? Well, I think we should, maybe a good place to start off is talking about what actually makes a good or a bad combat system. Like, what are examples of good, and maybe a few examples of a bad. And I suppose a combat itself, the word itself, is quite a broad spectrum as well. So it's maybe trying to dissect that a little bit into, you can certainly think of 2 very kind of main categories you can start with, which is one being kind of gunplay and the other side being a melee. And I suppose let's start with gunplay, because that's the one I said first. And I think that's a good system to have. So gunplay. I suppose, like, if I was to put you guys on the spot and say to you, what is the best example at the moment? And this is over a lot of genres, so it's kind of tactical shooters, arena-based stuff. What is your kind of ultimate, kind of best memories from a game that involves kind of gunplay? And I'll start with you, Paddy. Where's your bread buttered?
Where am I going?
Yeah.
So it's going to go back to 2007, to the first Modern Warfare.
OG Modern Warfare.
The OG Modern Warfare. So my sort of first person experience at that point wasn't massive, I don't think. So I probably played some Killzone, which is very, very different, but like fun. But Modern Warfare was my first proper like FPS.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like really smooth, arcadey. I think not too complicated. I think that's what it still separates Call of Duty from pretty much everything. I mean, they've tried pretty hard to overcomplicate things now, but it still separates it from pretty much any other shooter. I think it's just literally you hand a controller to anybody. These 2 things are shoot. This is run around. Just go for it. And yeah, it's just so smooth and easy and casual and fun, and you don't have to think too hard. And yeah, so that's where I go immediately if you think like what is like that perfect
best practice.
Yeah, what is that perfect shooter look like for me, at least?
Mm-hmm.
You know, the introduction to it.
Which you can say what you want about the bastardization of Call of Duty as a series, but you can never really kind of knock it for its mechanics and gunplay. I think that's always been
and I think what's
stellar.
What's crazy is that like there aren't imitators really.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't think of anyone. I think Ubisoft are doing something now, but the name completely escapes me. That's sort of quite like that sort of casual arena-based shooter thing. But I can't think of any sort of one who tries to do exactly the same thing of just having that really super arcadey, simple, or at least that has had the same impact. I mean, there is obviously like way more hardcore, like Counter-Strike, which is completely different. Mm-hmm. So yeah, they own that. They own that niche completely.
Mm. So if we were to like really drill into it, like and say like, okay, so from a pure mechanics point of view, so when we look at this we're talking about like our combat mechanics. So you've got all the basics, you've got viewing down the sights, you've got throwing a grenade on the right bumper, you've got shooting the triggers and all that kind of stuff, which you can kind of get across. It's pretty much kind of set the standard for all the games that come kind of after it. And like you say, all the poor imitators and I suppose like all the good imitators as well. That it kind of opened up a genre. But I suppose like if we were to say that is one of the best practice, what specifically in the way it handles a combat and scenarios of combat? I'm not just talking about like from a multiplayer point of view. We can talk about the AI in the actual kind of campaign. Like, is there anything that for you, Paddy, specifically really stands out when you say actually this is what makes Call of Duty a Call of Duty and why it set a gold standard for such a long time?
Yeah, so it's probably, well, I don't know, it's probably a contradiction, but despite the fact that it's super arcadey, but it feels real. Mm. Like, I mean, they've always gone for visual fidelity, and the guns have always looked and sounded really good. Mm-hmm. So I think that sort of, even though it's like super arcadey and whatever, it still has that very, I don't know. It feels like when they do things that feel epic, like in the stories or whatever, like it feels that way because it's really grounded, I suppose. Mm-hmm. But then I think from the way it plays, it's the smoothness of it. I think it's just so simple. Like the way you sort of run, aim down sight, jump over things, it's like all really blends well together. And it's interesting looking at what Call of Duty is now, and like Modern Warfare 3 is going to revert back some of the movement changes that they took out of Modern Warfare 2. Modern Warfare 2, the newest one, is quite clunky in comparison, and they're sort of reverting back, and it's just that's what people want. I think they want the ability to sort of zoom around a map really easily and aim down sight, jump over things, slide over things, just have a great time with a bit of movement, which I think is really what stands out from a Call of Duty.
Any major criticisms of it? Anything that you could hold it up and go, this is what it could have done better?
Well, I mean, it's hard to sort of look back and look at sort of Modern Warfare, the original compared to now. Like, I mean, there's tons of criticisms of Warzone, which I play a lot of, but that's quite specific. I think maybe, for that realism, doing the campaigns, it lacks a little bit of, when you're sort of running down corridors, especially in the older ones and shooting people, it's not the most exciting. Like you've seen campaigns of other games that do way more than what you do in a Call of Duty. Even if the set pieces are cool.
Because I think when we talk about a content system, we're not specifically just referring to which buttons do you press and how does it all come together in that sort of sense. But you're also talking about how does the game serve its environment in order to embellish the gameplay, and the historical kind of linear structure of certainly the campaign mode, I think, was quite restrictive for Call of Duty.
Yeah, I know what you mean, but then also at the same time, I think it's kind of what made it as well. I think having
really focused.
Yeah, having that super focus, like, okay, I'll play the campaign, I'll get a grip to the mechanics, and then I'll go on to multiplayer. I think that's one of the reasons why it probably is what it is. I think, and the reasons why this is a company that does not give a shit about anything other than making money. If they didn't think that the campaigns were a useful way of getting people in the door, they wouldn't bother. So I think they also recognize that the campaigns are important, and I think they set up the way the game feels, I think, really well. They sort of give you that taste of it. And, they do, with the big set pieces and stuff, like they add a level of kind of epicness to it.
Yeah, a lot of big set pieces, a lot of that, but you don't feel like it's, I think what I'm referring to is you don't feel like you get to utilize different strategies even within the campaign. It's very much, a corridor.
No, it's here's a corridor with people, shoot them, move to the next one.
Rather than trying to flank it, even kind of basic kind of strategy that you even find in kind of multiplayer, which is like finding a good shooting position, a shooting move, all those different sort of strategies you'd apply even online. And, it is, like you say, a very much a tutorial of what the controls are.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, Modern Warfare 3, they are talking about having open areas that you can approach like however you want. Which is, interesting. I mean, they did that, I think, in Modern Warfare 2. They had some, they have some like maps that you can play with, with a friend, which are like that. So they're missions against AI NPCs, on a big map where you could do that. It's sort of a bit middling, like one guy sees you and the whole map knows where you are type thing. So it'd be interesting to see what they do and like how that, what that does to COD, because it's actually very, very different. So interesting to see what they do, but how
it
they
needs something, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does need something.
It does do something. All right, in the interest of not making this a Paddy and Rob episode, let's move on to Al, who's hopefully got something a bit different for us. So, like, if I were to pose you the same question out, like from a combat, look, you were talking about combat systems and what makes good combat systems. Have you got an example of a good combat system that involves kind of gunplay?
I'd probably go for Call of Duty Modern Warfare 1. Nah, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to repeat all that again. I think the gunplay style of combat is definitely my favourite one. It's what I play best at and what I enjoy most.
Okay.
So I've got quite a few on my list that I do rank quite highly.
Are you only allowed one?
Damn it. Because two of them follow very similar trajectories, and I will pick the two because they have very similar styles.
Well,
but not different.
I gave Paddy 11 minutes to talk through what he thought, so you've got 11 minutes. So
I mean, I've already wasted 2 of them with these shenanigans.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm picking Titanfall and the Doom remake. So both Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal, because they kind of have the same play styles, just Eternal added in grappling. I'm
going to start with Doom because it feels a bit more different than Call of Duty in comparison to Titanfall. So let's start talking about Doom. So what about Doom specifically really hits you and really grabs you?
The 2016, because it was the 2016 remake. It was very much an on the rails shooter. So you did follow a linear path. So there wasn't too much outside of the run down this hallway. Here's a bunch of enemies that you could do, but the style of play in terms of deciding whether which weapons and how you utilize those weapons, whether you're going for the super shotgun, whether you're going for the BFG, the kind of the plasma, the rifle. It's like you had to pick and choose your different styles, and then also whether you were going to just completely take them apart or shoot them, have them kind of staggering, glowing, then go in for the melee finish, which gave you a bit more health or ammo or armor, depending on like chainsaws and like how you finish them off. And I think that added the extra element of your play style always changed depending on what you wanted. If you wanted speed running through, just to clear a hallway very quickly, you could basically shoot in a linear effect of shoot the first imp that comes your way, take it out, shoot the next guy comes your way, take them out kind of in melee, and every time you would just close the gap quicker and quicker. Or if you're running, like if you're in a fierce battle running low on health, you'd go somewhere, melee someone else, get a bit of health and armor back, go back to the fight, out of ammo, take out your chainsaw, cut apart the next guy, get a bit of an ammo refill. So like you were always having to kind of keep an eye on how you were playing, how you wanted to play. And I think just the variety of weapons and what each system meant that it was never just an on the rails, do the same thing every single time and you get stuck. You kind of always had to chop and change.
So I've tried to play Doom 2016 and I still think it's a great game. This isn't a criticism at all, but I just couldn't really get into it. But that's more because, kind of unlike you, I find it really hard to get into shooters in general. But one thing I do know about Doom, and you'll be able to correct me here because obviously you've played it a lot more than me, but from my understanding of it is obviously that the actual like mechanic they feed in of recovering health through a melee attack or close quarters kind of combat, or even just by an act of aggression, I think it's such a clever little way to enforce what that kind of Doom kind of carnage is, which is actually the only way you're going to be able to like, you know, a recover from this really shit position you put yourself in is go out there and kill some people, you know, and that you know, unlike, you know, let's refer to Paddy's Call of Duty example, which is, oh, I've been shot, I'll go and hide behind a corner and wait for the red screen to disappear. Like, no, you're not allowed to do that in Doom. If you want to recover, you got to go and kill somebody.
Well, so like it kept you going throughout.
Yeah.
There was no.
It keeps the pace going, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it keeps the momentum. You always got to keep moving, you know.
Because like in some COD games, I've gone in the single player. I've gone in, found a load of enemies, retreated a safe distance, got up my sniper rifle, and just picked people off. Mm-hmm. And kind of it was an easy win. It was enjoyable, but with Doom,
which is to its games, like credit, but obviously it doesn't.
It allows Doom, that multifaceted action, but Doom,
that's not Doom.
Yeah, you had to, once you were in a combat situation, you had to finish it.
Yeah,
and yeah, like you could stand back. I mean, I sometimes did just sort of stand back and kind of hit things at range, and then got hit a few too many times and gone, right, I have to now go in, and switch up entirely the tactic of how I'm fighting to recover my health or get more ammo. It like on a dime, you suddenly had to change exactly what you were doing because you were getting hit, so you had to be more aggressive, and it sped up the combat. It sped up or increased your adrenaline and kept things going, kept things pumping.
Which is kind of like I said, like, you know, when we talk about it from a mechanical point of view, that's why it's such a clever little mechanic. You know, that it's such a small thing that people probably wouldn't give a huge amount of thought to. That, oh, I get a bit of health, I recovered every time I do a melee finish. You know, like that's, when you say that out loud, it feels like a minor thing. But when you have a think about what that implies in terms of what you have to do in order to progress, in order to recover from a bad situation, I think that is a very clever little thing to add in the game to force that. I can't remember if that was how it was in the older games. That might have been something that's kind of been retained or something that they come up with specifically for the new ones. But yeah, very clever.
Yeah, I mean, like, it was definitely one of the better elements of kind of how they did that. Otherwise, it would have been very static and very linear.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is there anything about the Doom combat mechanics that you didn't like? Anything that you think that it could have been like, oh, I wish I could do this a bit more, or... You know?
I think it was just when you did stand off and shoot, it was very basic. Mm-hmm. It was just flat. So sort of using any sort of weaponry at a distance. Mm-hmm. Like, even though you had fun blowing things up, unless it was kind of one of the specialists like a BFG, or you're kind of using any of the ults of the weapons, it was a bit boring, and you kind of stuck to the preferred weapons. I mean, you really kind of rotated through the super shotgun and maybe one other item, and then just picked and choose which suited the enemy you were facing. Mm-hmm. And so I guess kind of, you had to go into close combat to kind of keep things exciting. If you stood off and shot things from a distance, it wasn't as fun. You could just kind of wait and kind of keep hitting supers with your rockets and all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of them, isn't it, where it's a blessing and a curse, isn't it, to be able to promote kind of actively a certain kind of playstyle takes away the players a lot of autonomy to approach things slightly differently or how they want. But I think, again, that's something that you can probably give it credit for, as opposed to as a critic. It is a hard one, isn't it? Because I think there's always that kind of balance between autonomy and creating effective kind of set pieces and playing to the game's kind of strengths.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's hard for me to really get into this one with you, because obviously not really played the new Doom, so I can only go from what I understand from a surface point of view. But that's great. Like, so you talked about Titanfall 2 as well. You said specifically Titanfall 2, it's not just Titanfall. Yeah. So Titanfall 2, like, again, I played a lot of the original Titanfall when that came out. I remember I got the beta for it, and I got a little bit into the online, but it never kind of lasted for me more beyond a few weekends. What I remember about the second one is, again, I didn't play it a huge amount, but I do remember it getting a lot of praise for the campaign that it didn't have in the first one. So yeah, what's your rationale for Titanfall? Why is that a standout kind of gunplay?
Yeah, I mean, the campaign itself was great, but I think what really stood out was it did what Call of Duty, Infinite War, and Advanced Warfare tried to do with the whole wall running, exoskeleton, kind of hyper speed, hyper movement, but it absolutely nailed it.
Yeah.
There was a lot of wall running, bouncing around, grappling hooks, so you could whip around the map. You could catch people in midair with your grappling hook and basically finish them off even if you were both sprinting along a wall or both midair. And then mixed in with the Titan element, you had sort of almost a 3-style play. You could be just run-of-your-mill first-person shooter on the ground with your weaponry, kind of clearing up your objectives or doing what you needed to do. Get in your Titan, have that kind of heavy armor, slow-moving, but just sort of destructive capabilities. Mm-hmm. And then the third option is being that annoying fly in a wall, where you're always on a wall, always wall running, sprinting, grappling, and then kind of just moving around to whip around the Titan. And that you could just play those in so many different styles, all within the same game. And it meant that whatever you were doing, again, there was that variety of, it wasn't just, this is how I'm playing the game. You could go, right, there's 3 Titans on the field, we don't have any, I need to be fast, I need to be on the move so I don't get caught out in the open. Or I need to be coming from above, so they're not expecting me to come from this angle. So let's throw this type of grenade, like my arc grenade, or something into this window, grapple around onto the roof and back down, wall run through this window. Titans won't find me, but I've captured this point here. So there's a lot more tactics, a lot more thinking, and they just nailed the speed. Because I know people complain about sometimes with these type of mechanics, it's too fast. Like, I know in the older Call of Duties, especially Advanced Warfare, Infinite Warfare, people just hated that. They made it too fast and too ridiculous. Because it was just like, you'd sprint, you'd do a double jump, you'd run along a wall, and someone would be there and kill you. Yeah. But Titanfall 2 made it, like, made the maps with the intention of, this is going to be all over the place.
I do remember the verticality of that being really important. The verticality of Titanfall. I remember, like I said, I didn't do much beyond a few kind of weekends, but it was definitely a fun experience, and I can see why people got really into it. I think it got really killed off by Battlefield 1, I think, released at the same time of Titanfall 2, and I think that really hurt it, didn't it?
It had an unfortunate release clash, because I think it was either just before or just after Call of Duty as well.
Yeah.
So it had that double of it released at the same time as Battlefield, and then around the same time as a Call of Duty, so it got boxed out by the well-known games. But, I mean, I got into it, I played campaign, I played multiplayer, I played kind of the wave modes, and I put a fair few hours because I loved everything about it. The speed, the movement. It was, to me, kind of the perfect speed shooter.
I agree. Okay, so I suppose if I was to pose myself the same question and say what makes, for me a good an example of a good combat system, and I've really given this some thought, because as I said earlier, I'm not, first person shooters probably aren't really my bag, and probably not my most preferred kind of way to play a game, but that's not to say I haven't enjoyed a lot over the years. I've played, I remember a lot of early days kind of Soldier of Fortune, and kind of a lot of nostalgia for things like GoldenEye and stuff like that. But I think if I was to hone on something, and I think this is quite a selection, but I think from a pure combat mechanic point of view, something I really got into was you can kind of say either of them, but either Far Cry 3 or Far Cry 4.
Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah. So
quite different games.
Yeah, and I think from my point of view, I think the way I think the one I liked, and this is what I alluded to before, was like the agency that game gave you. When you had those different kind of bases to take over, and you can go through and kind of stealth them all in a really kind of satisfying kind of stealth system, or you could just go all guns blazing with 100 different options and blow everything up.
When the Ubisoft formula was fresh.
Yeah, and it did feel fresh.
It wasn't like thousands and thousands of places of outposts to go and hit up and do the same thing over and over again. It was back then. Because I remember I didn't like 3, but then 4 was actually I did like 3. And then, but 4 was the one I think where it really sort of expanded on that, and I was like, oh, okay, that's
why I included 4.
This is really cool.
If I talk about from a pure combat point of view, if I'm not talking about the story and the characters, I'm talking about the combat. I think probably 4 is a better example, because you've got, I think you've just got a tighter controls, a better environments, and obviously you've got like the wingsuit and stuff like that, which allows you to move around like at the game space in new and creative ways that you couldn't in the one before, and little things like that, which I just I love that choice. I love that ability to go, right, there's a building there. There's 12 people down there. Go and do what you want. There's a set of alarms. Go and work it out. And I couldn't help but nearly always go down the stealth route. And I used to always feel like I used to neglect all of the great kind of weapons that game kind of gave me. And I used to always go with a stealth kind of loadout. But it used to be the game that I wanted to play. You know what I mean? And that's what I really appreciated. Like when it gives you that sandbox, and when it delivers you with that choice of how you approach. And I think you could also put like some of the Metal Gear kind of Solid games into this as well, like into this kind of free form approach to.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's not a first person shooter, but Metal Gear Solid 5, I think, actually might have one of the best gameplay loops I've ever played. Like,
yeah, just going around and sticking around that game,
unbelievably smooth. How you can act in that game, like if you watch people who are really really good at it, like what they're capable of doing is just unbelievable. That was
No,
crazy game that was.
I absolutely agree. I think they were. Yeah, I think it's as well. I think there's a lot of. I remember a lot of cover-based shooters and stuff that really fit into this game. You know, this idea of a combat mechanics and gameplay. And I think I'm trying to remember what they were called. They were old Rainbow Six games on the 360 area, and I feel really stupid now. I can't remember what they're called. But I remember they were. Oh, sorry.
Was it the Vegas ones?
Yes, that was it. Yeah, they were really good at cover-based shooters, and I don't think we get them as much anymore. I know you got your Gears of War and stuff that happened, but
because it was like that Ghost Recon kind of esque, where they did a lot of you had a team and you controlled the team, whilst you had sort of it was a mix between a bit of an RTS and a first-person shooter where you controlled the team, the entry points, loadouts, and then you also had the the first-person shooter element. And whilst it was a bit clunky, but I guess that was just. This going back retrospectively and looking back at a game that kind of came out in the early 2000s. I think it was really well put together.
No, it's great. And I think it's weird when we talk about a gunplay in games because we kind of naturally always lean towards the first person stuff. You know, we always lean towards you chose two first person shooting a game. Paddy chose, Call of Duty, and I chose kind of Far Cry when we first put our kind of minds to it. But I think if I was to really like give this some really strong thought, and if you were to really put me on the spot and say what is my favourite game with gunplay involved, I think Far Cry is a really good example of a really good first person sandbox game, and I think Paddy hits the nail on the head that this was when the Ubisoft formula was fresh, and it doesn't. If you probably play those games now, they probably feel a bit tired because of everything else that's come out afterwards. But I remember the way that game kind of made me feel really, really kind of stuck with me. I think that's why I'd say that. But I think we can because we don't have a time limit on this. I think we can spend a little bit of time talking about, if you guys would indulge me, non-first person shooting kind of shooting games, a gunplay. Surfacing a few examples there, and I'm going to come around to you, Al, and I'm going to put you on the spot. Like, if you, and I've, feel free to use the example of Gears of War because I know you're a big Gears of War fan. Like, is there any real good third-person gunplay games that stuck with you? And I'm not talking about what are good games, but I'm talking about what is a really good set of like mechanics from a combat point of view when it comes to that.
Yeah, like you said, I'm a huge fan of the Gears of War. I played every single one of them, and I think not too long ago I sat down and played each one back to back. But I don't think they're the best shooter mechanics. The movement is a bit clunky, but it's a very Gears of War style, which kind of you fall in love with, and you know how to utilize it and how to move it, and the satisfaction of chucking a grenade over cover or sticking it to an enemy, and just watching them disappear in front of you is it can't be rivaled. But it's quite having the chainsaw element on your rifle kind of does add a bit of an extra je ne sais quoi, but I don't think it ever puts it in the elite combat mechanics category. Great games, but I'd always put it as just it's a good mechanic, and it's a very Gears of War mechanic.
Paddy, before I ask you this question as well, I wanted to quickly pull you up on something. The Last of Us Part 2.
Yes.
And that might have been your answer to the question that I actually gave you. But I'm going to ask you about that from a comment, because I've not played it, and I'm going to assume Al hasn't, because he's not a PlayStation boy. And I know you have. But when I remember saw the trailer for that in one of the PlayStation showcases, I remember being blown away at how that looked from a raw kind of combat, a gameplay kind of loop. How did that actually deliver for you, ignoring the storyline and etc. etc.?
Yeah, so I mean, it's definitely a big step up from the first one. I think The Last of Us and the Uncharted games sort of get weirdly criticized for the way they feel to play. Like, they are quite basic sort of cover shooters, but they're fun. And the choice that you get, sort of the stealthy side of The Last of Us, is good. The animations are, as you'd expect from Naughty Dog, like unbelievable. But more for the close quarters combat, I think. So like when you're dodging stuff, the shooting doesn't feel too dissimilar to any Naughty Dog shooting. It's more the animations and the stuff, and like stupid shit like you pick up an arrow off the ground and it actually goes into her quiver and stuff like that. Like you can see all of that happening, and the fidelity is unbelievable. It's definitely not like transcendent third person gameplay or anything, but it looks as good as everything else in that game looks, if you know what I mean. Like it doesn't let it down from a sort of visual perspective.
Sometimes I think we're going to get into this on the Melee, but sometimes like that's enough, isn't it? You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be a perfect combat system in order for you to really love it.
It serves the purpose of what of the game is. It's like it's fun enough to get you between the story beats, which is all you need really for a third person relatively linear action game. That's what you want.
Did it live up to the promise where, like, from my point of view, again, thinking back to that trailer we watched a few years ago, and did it live up to the promise where, like, it felt like all these, especially when you're having that person versus person combat as opposed to fighting against, fighting against, I like the infected and stuff, like when you're fighting against people, did it give that feeling of actually these people with genuine kind of backstories and these are actual people that you're killing? Like, that was something they really tried to sell in the trailer, and again, did that actually kind of deliver on that? Because I feel that
it's kind of shallow, right? I mean, it's like oh
Jeff, no,
I love Jeff. What do we both Jeff?
I know that's very strange.
Jeff, no, he's my favorite cousin. But like, it's it's not really any deeper than that. Like,
he's the godfather to the second son.
He was gonna be, he had so much potential. So it's not much more than that, but like they're trying something. They're definitely doing something that I think other games, haven't done before. Like when you're running down a corridor on Call of Duty, like you don't care about anything, right? You just so they're making an effort to try something different.
Because this is the challenge with games, especially to gunplay, is like the cognitive kind of dissonance, isn't it, between like what you're actually doing in the game, which is mauling through these hundreds of people and stuff, and then you'll come to a cutscene where they've got an ethical problem with sacrificing one person. You know what I mean? It's like that kind of disconnect between the combat system and the story they're trying to tell. And I wondered, does that sometimes come into The Last of Us, or did they manage to break that in quite a good way? That.
No, I think, the theme is like anger and revenge and hate and stuff. So at all times, you understand why they're doing what they're doing. I mean, I don't want to get into the actual narrative because it's like makes me sad still thinking about what the choices they made. But fair enough. I actually need to play that again. I think I've never brought myself to it, but no, I think because of the themes, you understand the choices that they make and the fact that there basically is no mercy type thing. You don't have that choice. It's not like in Metal Gear Solid 5 where you can get a tranquilizer gun or knock people out. You can do the whole thing without killing it. You can take down a whole outpost without killing anybody. It's not like that. It's sort of thematically it all sort of fits in a better way than the first one, where it's like these guys are just going to kill us if we don't kill them. It's like, no, this that might not happen here, but everyone's very angry and moody and murdery.
Which is not the best way to be.
No,
let's be honest.
Be happy.
So, like, if I was to ask you the actual question that I was going to ask you, and it might be the same answer, but if you were to like give me a gold sticker example of a third person, a gunplay kind of game, if I was to pull you out of the world of first person shooter and get you in the world of third person, what's one that really kind of jumps out to you?
I would go for a Ratchet and Clank game, actually.
Oh, okay, right, that's it.
Because
that's cool.
because I mean, it's like, I don't know, it's just if the idea is to have fun, then that's basically the priority for them. Right?
Yeah.
It's colorful, it's bright, it's the weapons are super wacky and weird and crazy, and you can sort of there's a disco ball that makes all your enemies like start dancing, and you can go around and like shoot them and stuff, and it's
that sounds great.
Yeah, it is literally just how much fun can we have with these wacky collection of weapons, and they do that. Insomniac do that just so well. I think they're just a fantastic, like, accessible, fun third-person shooter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. I think I've played a little bit with my boy, like doing a few of them, and I've not really gone that much. I tried the more recent one they brought out as the launch title on PS5. I think Rift Apart.
I beat that recently. It's really good. Just looks unbelievable as well. So
very good, and it's a way of interestingly bringing gunplay into what's supposed to be a family-friendly game, which doesn't sound kind of right when you say it out loud, but it does. It does it in a very fun and a very approachable and kind of colourful kind of way that I really dig that. That's cool. Right, shall we get on to Melee? I feel like we talked about a gunplay for a while. I think Melee is where we can really get into this. So,
I have a game where I don't know where it fits, and I want to bring it up.
Is it Brave?
Yes.
On the 360.
the very difficult, hard game that everyone should be impressed by completing almost 100% of.
Yeah, but you didn't quite finish it, though, did you?
I didn't quite finish it.
Anyway,
where would you fit Dishonored?
Because
I wouldn't call it a melee game. I would call it more of a gunplay because you do more things at a distance, like call in rats and shoot people and not kill people.
We do have a lot of these kind of hybrid games where you are, I know there's a lot of games about kind of a spell casting and stuff like that, where it feels somewhere between kind of a melee and kind of gunplay, you know what I mean, and things like this. So yeah, it's an interesting kind of topic. Is where do these ones that don't kind of fit in either really fit?
Yeah, because even like a Skyrim, I'd call a melee game.
Mm-hmm.
Even though you've got your spell casting, you've got your bows, and you can use your stealth tree and kind of go that way.
Yeah.
And rarely touch someone. I'd still class them as a melee game because most of the combat tries to push you down that way unless you put yourself in a niche of being stealth, archer, or being spells.
Yeah.
Whereas I think...
Yeah, I reckon
something like...
shooters are shooters because that's all you do, right?
Yeah.
Like Gears...
Because you shoot.
Yeah, I mean, you got a chainsaw, but like you're shooting things. Like even Ratchet and Clank, like it's... Yeah, I think... So yeah, that probably does fall in the melee category for me, Dishonored. Yeah. And it's a very good shout. Well done.
Thank you. I play the occasional game.
You've played a game? Well done you. That's cool. I suppose, again, if we approach this the same way we did with the gameplay, which is like, let's start with our gold kind of examples of this. Like what is an example of a good melee system from a game that you've played in the past? And I'll start this time with a Paddy, because I started with our last time and I feel like it's unfair. So a Paddy, like from a melee point of view, let's move away from gunplay. What's one for you though, and you think, wow, yeah, that was great?
Tough to choose one, but I think because I'm thinking FromSoft, because they are the kings at the moment of that kind of game, and I can't decide between Elden Ring and Bloodborne. I think probably Elden Ring.
I haven't talked to you about Elden Ring because obviously we haven't spoken a couple of years, and obviously I knew you were a massive Bloodborne fan. I did give you a little thought when Elden Ring came out, going, I bet he's in on that.
Yeah, that was. I mean, just
tell me about Elden Ring.
Yeah, I mean, so if you know From Software like combat, then you know Elden Ring pretty much. They don't, they really don't sort of stray too far. But I think the flexibility has always been impressive. The flexibility in a world that big and that varied is crazy, right? That I can have a completely different playthrough to somebody else, in terms of the weapons that I use, and you can still navigate the world without, obviously with plenty of difficulty because it's that kind of game, but you can still have fun, whether you run around with a giant shield and a giant sword, or you're much sort of lighter and quicker. And
where do you land?
Yeah, exactly. It's the flexibility is just like insane. And then it's interesting you were talking about Doom in terms of getting health back. Bloodborne adds such a massive variation to melee combat by giving you that completely different from their other games, where if you hit the enemy back immediately, you gain back health.
Oh, okay.
And it adds a completely different cadence to combat because you can't be sort of passive. You have to be active. Which I think is why I vibe with Bloodborne much more than like Dark Souls, because of that sort of quick active side of it. There isn't that in Elden Ring, but then Elden Ring just has so many options and so much flexibility, and just to sort of play your own way. And it's a masterclass in game design in every single way, really.
Yeah. In terms of like, well, I think we even talked about this a little bit even before we start recording, which is like, this rise of, there seems to be many years when you look back at where Assassin's Creed were, and Arkham and all this kind of stuff that was maybe really hitting its stride kind of 8 years ago, kind of 8-10 years ago. And when you had FromSoft come out with this, this a fighting system which no longer relied on scripted kind of animation to deliver that kind of visceral kind of output, like in terms of if you press the square button to counter, it plays this really cool animation where he spins around him and kind of shoots him in the back of the head, and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's all completely real time. Like every action your character makes is based on a button you've pressed on your pad. Is that, I suppose, like, to really open it up, do you think that's something that the reason why that has become its own kind of genre in a way, as a kind of a counter, like, rebellion to what was mainstream?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely, I think we've moved past the whole sort of difficulty snob thing, I think, as well. Like, I mean, I love Bloodborne, but I couldn't beat it. There was a boss I got stuck on, and I was like, you know what, I have other things to do in my life, so I put that down. I did beat Elden Ring, but with the massive help from some random dude in the world, wherever you are, who I summoned for the final boss battle and like helped me beat. So I'm not good at these games, but I think even they knew that they couldn't take you into a world that size and not help you. And there are so many things in Elden Ring that make Elden Ring much easier than their previous games. So they're evolving as well. But I think to go back to your question in terms of the difference, I think it is. I mean, it is really special, I think, how much freedom you have in combat, and how I think everything's like your fault. Basically, like, there's some cheesy shit, obviously, but when you die into a boss, it's because of something that you did, I think. And it's that agency, like you say, without having the scripted animation, without being able to sort of press this and then this to, jump around somebody, jump on the back of them.
QTE events.
Yeah, exactly. QTE event, or, some sort of like combo thing that you've got from in some game. It's really, it's so much in your hands that basically you succeed and you fail based on what you do. And I think that's just a really nice way to approach combat.
I think that we're going to explore this. There's different forms of combat, and they're all appealing in different ways. And I think the inherent issue we have with this entire episode is there's not one that's inherently kind of better than the other. It's a case of you get different things from different ones, and I think what you isolate is a very reward based in kind of a kind of hit. You know what I mean? Like, you've conquered something or you've overcome something that genuinely took skill and practice for you to genuinely get better at, rather than improving your XP so your hit points were enough for you to do it. You just have to get good at it, right?
Yeah, and thankfully in Elden Ring they help you when you're not so good, which is my
it's your thing.
Which is my issue, because I'm not very good, but still, like, I had a good time.
Yeah. Oh, cool, great. Al, Mr. Al, Mr. Melee Man.
It's probably not going to be the ones you think of, and the only reason I'm not agreeing with Paddy is because I haven't actually played any of the Dark Souls, Bloodborne, or Elden Ring games.
You don't have to have played them, Al. In fact, we know that it's going to be brave. We've already talked about it.
Yeah. But I would definitely say I do like that style, the Dark Souls, Elden Ring style of play, and I do really appreciate that kind of, you have an element and you become a specialist of it, whether you're going sword shield, whether you're going two-handed sword, whether you're going kind of light and fast, like, you have something that you build a specialty towards. And I do really appreciate when especially a melee game has that style of, you've gone down your route. Because in a shooter game, you can switch between shotgun, SMG, assault rifle, sniper rifle, but it's the same kind of thing, just at a different distance. Whereas in a melee game, the style of play completely changes how you move, how you build your character, how you traverse the world, how you face different threats.
I think if you were going to jump into that kind of aside from stuff, I would, despite being the biggest and the least sort of accessible from the outside, I think Elden Ring is by far the most accessible one that they've made, because there's so much that they sort of help you. It still has all the same sort of really obtuse story, and every character's fucking weird and whatever, but like they help you a lot to sort of to help you find what really works for you. So yeah, I would, if ever you feel the urge, that's the one to go for.
Oh, I've felt the urge for a while. I just haven't found the time. But yeah, it's definitely one I want to go to. But my answers for this again would be a twofer, and I've already mentioned Dishonored before, so I'll kind of start there quite quickly. Just because it is that you have so many options of how to play it, and you go down that route and you stick with it. You can either go from the non-fatal route where you knock out everyone, things get a bit easier, there aren't any rats, like the whole game changes if you don't kill people, or if you do. Whichever side you go for, the game completely changes. There's more rats, there's more disease, and people become more aggressive. There's more police, or the whole element of the game changes depending on how you play. And with the ability to kind of jump from spot to spot, use different spells and abilities and weaponry, you dictate how you want to go about the world. And that's always my issue with melee games, is I sometimes get to, and this could be just an entirely personal thing and not a mechanic issue, is I get too bogged down with the same set of moves. Like I've gone through so far 2 and a bit of the Yakuza games, up at like 100 hours into Yakuza 0, about 60 into Yakuza Kiwami, and I think I'm probably about like 20 or 30 into Yakuza Kiwami 2. And I still use the same combination. Like all my fights use basically the same combination, just slight variants. Yeah. So it's kind of in that mechanic, I get a bit bored. And that's, I think, just me not really playing around too much. I know what works, so therefore I do it in the fight.
Yeah. I want to win the fight, therefore I'll do the thing that makes me win the fight.
Yeah, it's just sort of
like... It is a bit cheesy, yeah.
Yeah, here's a punch combination. Oh, I build up my meter. Here's an object. Cool, special move. Here's the special move that I know I prefer, or it works better in these situations. So that's why I haven't gone for what you might have thought, which would be the Yakuza games, because I played them quite a lot.
One thing I will say about the Yakuza game, one thing I did like, I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but specifically about the heat moves. The heat moves, when you're in a fight, it does a lot more kind of damage the first time you do it, but the second time you do the same heat move, it has a lot less. So it tries to invite you to use a variety of heat moves, which invites a different playstyle. So I think they tried to egg you out. I don't know if that's something you've ever noticed about the game.
I've never really noticed it. I think I have occasionally gone, that should have killed him. Why is he still alive?
Yeah, but it's because each time you do it, it progressively gets less.
I did not actually
in a single fight. Yeah, I think that's a clever little mechanic to try and keep things fresh.
But I always use different heat moves just because I'm not around the same object to use the same thing. Yeah. So I think
this time it's a cone, this time it's a bike. Yeah, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Well, I think my second game might surprise a few people. I put in Shadow of War.
No, that's not surprising at all. I think that's a great example.
Because I think it's that good. It has that sort of Arkham type fighting system in it, but it links in the elements of, again, you can use the bow and arrow, you can use the archery side of things, you have your specials, and you have your move sets where you're surrounded by enemies and you can jump from enemy to enemy.
I like being able to warp on that as well, like warp behind someone and chop their head off. That was very satisfying.
In some games you get surrounded and it's a slogfest to get out. In something like Shadow of War, you can stun an enemy or do like a sort of a area of attack move which stuns everyone, escape, kind of repick your battles, re-go into stealth, and then pick people off one by one if you want, or go into a bigger combat system. And I just like that varying elements, or depending on how you wanted to, or what the outcome you wanted. You weren't always going to kill people. Sometimes you wanted to turn people over to your side, build a bit of an army so you could get a place, or your long-term goal was to capture, to turn a captain or one of the actual main people who had voices and followed you around. And then you always were on edge because someone could trick you or basically backstab you. and it had always that element of combat of what is my end goal here.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going into somewhere going, here's a group of people, I'm going to kill them, let's go. You always, what am I doing here? What is my goal? Why am I basically attacking this outpost? Am I clearing it? Or am I getting to this person so I can get them onto my side so I can use them as a spy, infiltrate, and certain objectives. So it's, I think that element of it has the same, a lot of variance in every single battle you do. And I think that's kind of a theme throughout my combat is always, I like a bit of variation.
Like a bit of variation, a choice, autonomy.
Yeah.
To have different approaches. No, really good answers. I think if I was to ask myself what's a gold standard for me, if I was to think about melee combat and where I'd fall on the scale, it's hard for me because I think this isn't just exclusive to me. I think this is the same for all of us. Like, there's a lot of different combat systems I've really enjoyed, and it's hard to say that this is it. But I think for me, I'll probably go for the opposite end of the scale from where a Paddy come in, and I'd probably say something like Assassin's Creed 3, which I know we put in our list originally on the YouTube video, but for me, something that I really appreciated about that is it wasn't hard, it wasn't really that challenging, didn't really require a lot of effort and or skill, but it was just so super satisfying. And I know it was very heavily scripted and stuff like that, but there's nothing, I don't think there's any more joy I've got from a game where I could just kind of load it up, jump into the middle of about 12 people and just absolutely demolish them with a tomahawk. And I always think back to doing that, with you had, it was the old school Assassin's Creed kind of combat system of, hold block and wait for someone to attack, and they attack, you press the counter button, it plays a pretty animation for you. And then if someone else attacks you in the middle of that, you press it again and it plays another pretty animation. It all looks lovely and fluid and great, and it kind of plays it for you. But the visceral response I used to get from that, I used to get such a rush from just roaming around and just playing with the combat system, dicking around with the different kind of weapons you were given, from the hidden blades to the tomahawk to the sword to different variations, and picking up a spear and running across and spearing someone through the chest, and it was a little bit of a really silly sandbox where you could kind of just really, really kind of let loose without really sitting there trying to sweat it out. And I think it doesn't get the credit it deserves because it was a really buttery smooth experience. And, you even had, I don't know if you guys remember, but you had a double and kind of triple count as well, where people would try
you could start
attack you at once.
Enemies,
attack you, and you just press square and you do this beautiful animation to attack out all three of them, and it just felt so good. I know it's probably, if I was to come out in front of an audience of 50,000 and say this, I'd probably get a lot of groans going, "Oh God, it's all scripted. It's not hard. It's not challenging." And I think I missed the boat when we all agreed that something had to be hard for it to be fun. That actually not everything has to be hard to be fun. There's some things you can just enjoy. But yeah, for me, I think it opens up probably the next part of this conversation, like feeding into this kind of a segue, this idea of what is it about a combat mechanic, especially in this kind of melee space where it is a little bit more easier to define, I think when we look at this, there's different games and they all have different strengths and they all feed different sorts of different types of players who want to get different things out of it. And we've highlighted things that we enjoy in our games and we look for in our games, and we've highlighted out that something that's a challenge, something that's put together well, where you feel like you've conquered something is absolutely one of those things you can hook on. The Owl talked about the agency and having the freedom of choice and go at it how you want was a good approach, and I've talked about the more kind of endorphin feedback you get and just the visceral kind of sense of being an absolute kind of god, and feeling like an absolute kind of badass, without sweating too much. Like, do you think there's any other kind of types of combat systems in that kind of sense that we could categorize out that are really strong, that make a really good system. We've isolated three different really appealing kind of factors you can apply to a combat system. Can you guys add to that?
Like, I guess it might be like the type of enemy you face, and not in terms of like how they play, but in almost the health levels of them. Is it going to be like a quick fight of you do a combo, you've taken them out, you move to the next person, you do a combo, you've taken them out? Or are you sitting there grinding through a health bar in a melee? And that completely changes the dynamic of the game, the feel of the game, and how you approach it.
Both can work, right? Like the whole grinding down a health bar and stuff. And you know what? It's really enough that you bring this up, Al, because it probably brings me back to a point that I've brought up 100 times before in 100 other things we've done, but probably really, really kind of relevant to the conversation. It actually takes us back to gunplay. For me, and you guys know this really well about me, for games like The Division 2, games remember that one we played, Outlanders? We played that for a bit.
Anthem.
And there's this whole idea of RPG in gunplay, and that completely breaking the idea of how the combat mechanic of gunplay works. I don't get the whole principle that because someone is a sergeant kind of major, and I'm
a big
level 48,
so you have to shoot me 7,000 times before I die.
Exactly. Yeah. That for me is just it completely breaks it for me. I really struggle with games where I can see how much health is coming off someone when I'm shooting them in the head, and they've got, I've got 400 health because I'm higher ranked than all my peons, so I can take more bullets to the head. And it's just like, what? You know,
that's not how this works.
Yeah, and it's like you can maybe get away with it, like in melee, because there's something to be said about a technical ability and strength. You know, that you got to get stronger in order to force the sword through your enemy. You know, like you can kind of get away with it a bit. That, you know. But when I think when it comes to gunplay, I've always kind of struggled like with that, with the whole let's have a health bar and let's kind of grind someone down over a series of about half an hour of just shooting.
I think there's
bullet sponges.
Yeah, there is more of an allowance in melee to have that kind of grind down a health bar, because like you said, it is that skill of you're slashing, you're moving, you're stabbing, you're kind of doing a special move on a large boss.
Especially if it's a big old like monster, like you know, like if we are talking about a kind of Elden Ring or something, where I imagine again, kind of Paddy, you can shine a light on this. Like it does, you know, from what I don't know much about Elden Ring, I know you see a big boss and a giant kind of bar appears at the top, and I imagine it is a bit of like
there's normally
trying to take like a couple of lumps out of them.
They are normally massive, right? Like either they're people in loads of armor, or they're just like 20 foot tall, or you know, you can understand why this thing is going to take some work to put down, because you know you do have a sword, or you have a spell, or you know you haven't got like an RPG. So it doesn't have that sort of dissonance, I guess. The same way that you do when you're holding a gun. And
I think the allowance is there is difference. Like you're actually doing something different with the weapon. You know, if you're kind of going into melee, you're going in, you're rolling around the side, avoiding an attack, slashing, retreating, coming back in, stabbing, maybe sort of throwing this, like doing a spell or doing a bit of a distance move, then going back in. Whereas for gunplay, you're behind a barricade, you empty a clip, you switch maybe to another weapon, you empty a clip, you switch to a weapon, you empty a clip, you do a special, or throw a grenade, fire a rocket, you empty another clip. It's sort of very boring, one-dimensional, repetitive. Whereas with the melee option, you're moving around, you're always doing something slightly different, attacking from a different angle.
How do we feel about online melee combat?
Depends on them. I've played a bit of Chivalry, and did enjoy it. I think again it can be a bit repetitive. So and
I've always really struggled. I mean, I generally struggle maybe on most multiplayer games. I've got to be really something kind of very specific for me to get in it from a multiplayer point of view. But every melee multiplayer game I really struggle with, and it's really strange because I really like kind of melee games. But I think because there's so many, you know, such a diverse, broad range of skills that come into it, that in comparison to maybe a shooting game where, you know, if I come up against a skilled player, 7 times out of 10 they're going to kill me, but 3 times out of 10 I'm going to get a shot off, and I'm going to and I might pop one in the eye or something. But when you come up against someone who's very, very skilled on a melee game, and this could be true on if we talked about kind of fighting games as opposed to just online. I think the skill gap you can create with kind of melee is so much wider. Every time I come onto them, I just feel like I'm just getting slapped around every time. It's so hard to get up to speed.
Yeah, and I think the perfect example of that I think I faced, and it was probably with you as well, Rob, was For Honor.
For Honor,
when
I remember that
first came out and we played it together, we all kind of had a bit of fun. It was a bit even because everyone was relatively new to the game. But I think it was
great for the first weekend.
Yeah,
the first weekend that was a great game. But after that, once people got good at it, and you're a bit like, now people know what they're doing. It's a bit like, oh god.
Yeah. So a few months later, we came back, revisited, and we were like, wait a second, how the hell did they do that? Every 1-on-1, I'm getting destroyed in half a second because there's a maneuver that I haven't learned they have.
Leave me alone.
I think that's the perfect example of kind of why multiplayer melee is its own element of I don't enjoy it because you have to sink the time in.
So I know you've given an example of this, Alma. I'm gonna maybe drill into Paddy for this one a little bit. Have you got any really good examples of a first person a melee action that you've really enjoyed before? Because that's always a bit of a nuance, isn't it? A bit of not a nuance, and a bit of a niche, isn't it? I've always struggled with that.
So I'm going to go down a series that you have already spoken about, and I'm going to go for Far Cry Primal.
Oh, I never got around to Primal.
Because
so are you going to have to tell me about that?
Yeah, I mean, funnily enough, I think it's probably my favorite Far Cry game. Because there was something really, I mean, so you have a bow and arrow and stuff, and I think maybe like a slingshot or something. So you do have a ranged option, but obviously, you're a caveman, so it's more about sort of like the melee stuff. And it's just, I don't know. I think because I've been thinking about what you said about sort of what is it that makes a good combat sort of mechanic. I mean, this sort of melee combat. What makes it special? And I think it's when it really fits in with the world that you're in. I think so. When Shadow of War or Shadow of Mordor, like you are pretty powerful, right? And there's kind of these stupid orcs, and so you have all these ways of like parrying and having all these really slick animations and stuff. And the same, the same goes for other games like Assassin's Creed, for example, where you're supposed to be this like really awesome assassin, and all these other guys are, you get that really power fantasy, whereas in like a Dark Souls, you are literally nothing, right? In Elden Ring, there are all these gods and kings, and you're just supposed to be this random dude, right? And so, and it feels that way, and I think that's pretty sort of when they work. It's when they really fit in with the overall sort of world. And I'm actually thinking about a game that we haven't spoken about, and it's not first person, but Ghost of Tsushima, which is the ultimate like. Just wander up casually to an outpost full of people and just be like, who wants it? And
of course
I have never felt cooler in a game than just sort of slowly walking up to an outpost and just be like, hello everyone, who wants to die? It's just, and again, it does have those slick animations, and it does have this way of moving around it, because it's sort of fulfilling that power fantasy. Like you are this like unbelievably powerful, warrior. So yeah, but from a first-person perspective, like Far Cry Primal. I mean, there aren't many. I don't think there are many great options. I mean, Dishonored is first-person, right? That's like I love.
Also first-person. Sorry,
the Dishonored games are first-person, and they're fantastic.
Is that our kind of golden example then of first-person kind of melee, kind of done right, if you will?
Yeah,
I think it's hard to do, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very hard to do.
Yeah, it's a really challenge. Weirdly enough, you kind of. What you said before kind of maybe answered a question that I was going to have, but you answered earlier, which is great, which is like, we've talked about this whole idea of like complete real-time, every action you do is due to a button press sort of combat you get from the Souls-like game, and then the other side of the spectrum, which is your old school Assassin's Creed where it kind of plays the game for you. All you got to do is press the right buttons at the right kind of times, and it kind of all does it for you, into the kind of QTE kind of side of it. But I think when you bring up Ghost of Tsushima, I think that is like the comfortable kind of middle ground where it does the best of both. You know what I mean? Where you do get that pretty skill based. If you put up if you put up the challenge of that game, it can be a very skill-based, very challenging game to play. But at the same time, you still get that very strong kind of visceral, kind of cinematic feel from it, and that's what I love about that game. I think that's a beautiful combat system, and I can't believe it's taken us an hour
this long to get to it.
to talk about it.
It's so good.
Yeah, I have to admit, like the one thing I will say though about Ghost of Tsushima, and I don't think this is something that's reflective of the combat system. The combat system kept me going for as long as it did, but I've played through that game twice, and more so than other games, I feel a lot of burnout towards the end of that game.
Okay.
I don't know.
Maybe just like the world itself. I mean, I don't know how deep you got into like
that's what I mean.
I
don't think it's the reflection of the combat system. I think it's a reflection of a open world where you just got to go kind of point to point, and I get a bit like, oh, all right, okay, let's go to the next shrine or next thing. It's a bit like, okay, So maybe it was more about that and the side content not being very fleshed out. So maybe it was more about the world and less about the combat.
We had a great time with Legends, didn't we?
That was great. Yeah, we should really pick it up again.
We should. That was so good. It's really good.
Yeah,
I mean,
really
that's just a fun little thing they added, and
we'll call it in the podcast, and we'll go and play that instead. No, cool. No, great. Yeah, no. I think for me, because I was sitting here when you guys have been talking, I've been sitting here thinking like, I was going to pose the question. There seems to be this like little collection of games that you can neatly put in the same bracket, and I think Assassin's Creed was the start of it. But you can look at Arkham, you could look at the Spider-Man games, you could look at Al's example, the Lord of the Rings one that I forgot the name of.
Shadow of War.
Yeah, Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War. And I think there's probably a few others that I've not kind of named. You could kind of put them in the same kind of bracket of this kind of a counter combo system.
I think
that I love. I think it's great. I love those games.
Yeah, I think where Shadow of War, Mordor, kind of where both those games take the step away is they add that extra element in of kind of like that. I guess the fantasy spooky element where you can kind of control people. And I know, like in the other Arkham games, you kind of get a bit more technology, but they kind of stick mainly with the fighting, and you get to use the Batmobile. But Shadow of War, Shadow of Mordor have that extra element in there, which therefore elevates them. I think just sitting above, but definitely in that same bracket.
One thing I noticed is obviously Shadow of Mordor. I feel you're a lot more overpowered and a lot more able to just kind of tear through people, especially towards the end game, than you are. More so than you are on the Batman games and the Arkham games. I think the Batman and Arkham games, and again, we haven't really talked about these games from a point of view, because this was the one we put as the number one, if you remember in our kind of video, was Arkham Knight. And the reason why that is, I think there's something that, again, it probably gets a lot of slack because, again, a lot of people say, oh, it just plays itself. You can get away with just playing square. Trust me, if you just press the counter button, you'll get absolutely creamed on Batman Arkham. You need to have good timing, you need to read the enemies around you, you need to know the countermeasures for each of the different kind of enemy types, and I think it's a very in-depth combat system that again gets kind of poo-pooed on a little bit because it fits in that kind of bracket of it's all scripted, and people just sort of claim you can just press one button and it'll get through it, but I think that really
no, it's a really good complex combat system, and just really, I mean, it's one of those things where, like, if Ubisoft sort of set the standard for the open world checkbox thing, this set the standard for third person, like close quarters melee. Like fantastic.
And kind of on that point, as it then become a victim of its own success in that way of it was so good and so great at doing what it did that it became that standard. And now you kind of look at it and go, that's how a good game should be. Therefore, we are only basing the great games because they do that and then they add to it. So it's sort of almost, we don't look at those Arkham games, those style of fighting games in the same light because we're just going, this is how it should be. This is just, like, let's ignore it. This is how the base level of a melee game should exist because we have found what's good and now let's get it better. And so we're picking kind of the games above it or in a different style like Dark Souls or Elden Ring. But with Shadow of War and that style of game, it's the great game because it's got the Arkham mechanics, and then it's gone above.
Yeah.
I don't know how they went from that to whatever this Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League game is.
Yeah, I know that's been delayed.
It's sad.
I don't really know what is that. Is that anywhere close to it now? I've not really keeping track of it.
I don't know. I don't know when they pushed it to. I don't know when it's going to come out. I guess it has to at some point.
I mean, Arkham Knight was a long time ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
They've had that on the boil, unless they've got another game on the boil as well. Though they've had that on the boil for a long time, and
I think this is probably a conversation for a completely different podcast. But like, it's what happens when you set your business model out before you start making your game. It's like, we need to make a game as a service. It's like, no, just make a good game and then decide how you want to sell it. But that's a story for another day.
Yeah, another podcast. So I think the next good place to lead it into, because we've talked about like what is good and what's great and stuff, but I think across gunplay and melee, I think it's worth talking about maybe what hasn't been so good or what's bad. And this isn't necessarily saying that what's a bad game, because I don't think necessarily because a game's got, we talked about this with The Last of Us Part 2, where you said it's not a brilliant combat system, but it's enough to get you from A to B, and it's not the strength of where that game kind of lies. So you forgive its shortcomings in a way, and I think for me, like, I'm really interested in trying to home in and like, okay, what is an example of a bad combat system and why is it bad? And probably a second question from that is it bad enough to ruin the game? I'm not going to ask anyone specifically, just open up the floor, because I feel like I'll put someone on the spot if I ask them.
I'm happy to go for so like the two most recent Legend of Zelda games, in terms of
controversial, that is.
Well, I mean, there's so much to do in those games that you're going to have a good time, but the combat is just, I mean, it's not it, right? Like in the first one, your weapons break so easily, and I mean, the Dark Souls and the From Software games are the most obnoxious games you'll find. Even they don't bother with weapon degradation. Mm-hmm. Like they are the kings of like making your life miserable, and even they're like, no, that's too much for us. So it's my opinion, it's terrible combat system. Mm-hmm. To have your weapons break, so basically you're just in the menu every now and every few minutes. But there's still so much great in those games that it doesn't really matter. Do
you think weapon degradation is inherently bad, or do you reckon that's just a bad example of weapon?
Oh no, I can't imagine why that's fun. Like, I understand maybe they want to encourage creativity of choice, but just, I think especially with the second one with the Tears of the Kingdom coming out in the same year as Elden Ring. Mm-hmm. And they let you fuse weapons in Tears of the Kingdom, so they have a bit more health. You're not sort of in the menu so much. It's better. It's definitely not, it's definitely not great. I think with those two games coming out at the same time, the fun the fun comes in the variety, sure, but Elden Ring is an example of how just make all the different weapons fun. Yeah. Make them fun to use. Make the way the enemies approach you fun and different, and it's not right. It's the combat is this thing that sort of you have to do every now and again while you're wandering around. It's not like a centerpiece to those games, and that's fine. Like I said, there's tons in there that to love. They are fantastic.
There's
games.
lots of good to Breath of the Wild.
Oh man, and Tears of the Kingdom. They're fantastic.
Exploration.
They're fantastic games. It's just,
all the puzzles.
If you think that Zelda was that sort of, this is your sword, this is your shield, like third person targeted combat, which in 1998 was
the pioneer of
when 1998 was the coolest thing ever, and something that was like one of the reasons I play games was Ocarina of Time, and the way that felt. It's just it doesn't really serve anything. I think it doesn't really serve what the game is. I
was quite disappointed by it, outside of the weapon degradation and stuff. Like, one thing I was disappointed about is when you use a sword as Link and you go up to an enemy and you'll press the Z targeting thing and you start pressing the attack button and he gets his sword out and he just hits left then right, then left then right. You know what I mean? He just sort of slaps them with the sword. Yeah, rather than showcasing any kind of sword play or. Yeah,
I mean, there's combat has moved on a lot, and I understand that they have focused on other things. I know these games, they take a long time to develop them, and they're perfect in every single way. They it just runs incredibly well. The things they're able to do is basically like magic, those developers. But I understand not trying to do everything. They could have. There's not a huge amount of time between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. I understand them not I understand them iterating on the decision that they made, as opposed to just being like, actually, you know what, let's do something different. That's fine. You know, maybe the next one we get has everything. You know, has it all, has the same kind of scale and discoverability, and sort of go anywhere, tell your own stories. And it has interesting enemies, and it has interesting weapons, because the enemies as well are just bland. You know, maybe we'll get there, maybe we won't. Maybe they're happy with the way they've gone. That's, you know, it's fine. But yeah, I think that's a sort of an example of something that doesn't work when the rest of the game is just like perfect.
It doesn't inherently kind of make it a bad game. It's just for you the worst aspect of a good game.
Yeah, and to the point where I'll be like, you know what, I'm just going to run around these enemies. Rather than try and fight them because I can't be asked. But that's,
One thing I did find really, for like, you know, when I feel like the argument for the weapon degradation in Breath of the Wild was, you know, if you were to kind of think of the rationale of why they did that, and it was all about trying to promote a variety in the weapon type they use. And you struck a fantastic point before, which is actually, if you make all those different kind of weapon types really interesting and really kind of unique, people will naturally kind of want to try them all out anyway.
Yeah.
But
way around that is just the enemies you face. If you have a different type of enemy who react differently to a weapon, then you will always look for different combinations, different styles, different effects.
Where a spear might work good for this boss, you know, a sword might better for that boss. Yeah, no, it does. It does. But one thing I found like incredibly frustrating about what the weapon degradation system did to you, it did to me anyway. I don't know if everyone else did this, but this is certainly what I did. Is actually it removed my choice, because what I ended up doing was I kind of systematically always using the lowest powered kind of weapon I had.
Yeah, until it was gone.
Until it was gone, and then you go to the next lower powered one. So I was actually doing things procedural. You know, in the fact that I wasn't forced to do that choice, but because I wanted to protect my higher level weapons for a harder fight, I was always using my lower level stuff. So in reality, that even though it feels like they're doing it because they want you to use the variety of weapons and have a wide choice, you actually find yourself actually shoehorned into, you know, going down this procedural route where you don't really have a choice. You're just doing things in a certain order.
I mean, it's the weapon version of you were too scared to use any health potions, so you ended the game with 60 health potions and never touched one.
Yeah. Like, I haven't used any of the and that's the one thing I think, again, I'm kind of with you, Paddy. I'm not a fan of the combat in either of. Well, I haven't played the newest A 'Tis the Kingdom, but certainly Breath of the Wild is certainly not the thing I enjoyed, and I'm the same as you. I kind of avoided it all kind of in stack. Not because I inherently sit there and oh my god, this is so awful, but it was just because it wasn't exciting.
It's the least fun part of that game, right?
It's the least fun.
You find other ways to find your fun, and I think, you know, sticking in this sort of huge developer, very successful, where the combat is sort of an afterthought. I mean, or not an afterthought, but not as developed. Then I mean, I can't speak for Starfield because I haven't played it, but pretty much any Bethesda game, you know, both the like Skyrim and Oblivion, and also, you know, like the Fallout with the VAT system is because, well, we don't really know how to make fun gunplay, so we'll let you sort of magically aim it with VATs. Again, like I don't even know how much Skyrim, like an unspeakable amount of Skyrim, and the fact that the combat wasn't that interesting didn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, you know,
bad combat doesn't equal a bad game.
No, not at all.
Games. I mean, how many times I said to you about, like, you know, to you and you guys, and I think you guys kind of repeated back to me about like The Witcher 3. You know what I mean? You take the combat system on The Witcher 3 and you just go, well, it's all right. It's kind of serviceable. It does the job, you know. But like
the combat music's cool.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. The music was great. But like, you know, but that's not the meat and gravy of the game. The meat and gravy is you know, the characters, the stories, the sub stories, the challenging choices, the way it lays out its world to you, the environment it puts you in, the world building, you know, all that sort of stuff. It does really well. It doesn't need to be, if it also had a fantastic combat system, then it's an even better game. I'm not going to say
technically it did.
Yeah, technically it did.
Gwent,
yeah. No, you're right. I completely rescind everything I said.
If every battle was settled by Gwent, that combat system would be 10 out of 10.
I'm sure there's a mod. I hope there's a mod where you can replace every in-game battle of just a random Gwent. I think that'd be great. I'd play that. I'd play the shit out of that game.
Yeah, something that had bad combat mechanics. It created such a great combat game.
Mm-hmm. And I feel I might have just used your example, Al, but have you got any other examples of maybe? And I'm not specifically looking for bad gameplay, bad combat mechanics in good games. Like, you can also just give me a bad game. You know what I mean? Like, that's completely ruined by a bad combat system.
Yeah, and I think The Witcher would have been kind of my go-to, and I'm going to pick one that is not necessarily a bad combat system, but for me, because of reasons I'll give, makes it a bad combat system. Okay. And that's most of the fighting games. So we're talking about kind of Mortal Kombat, Street Fighters and all that. Because my approach to it is button mashing. And
so
kind of
you don't like it because you're not very good at it, is basically what you're saying.
I don't like it because it's too complicated. I think there's kind of, if every good move is dictated by kind of 6 different combinations of button mashing and then hitting the stick up to the top corner or something, and then that's one move, and then you follow up by another good move. So to get good at the game, you have to learn these intricate movements. That's playing one system for far too long.
And definitely. I'm completely with you. Like, the fighting system, and I think you're onto a point, but it's also, you can understand why people are really into it as well.
Oh yeah, once you're good at it, you learn it, and I'm sure it is a great mechanic, and that's why I said it's not a bad fighting mechanic. I just think because of how much effort, how much time, how much you have to dedicate yourself to learn that mechanic to then enjoy it, or at least get the most out of it, it makes it less of a game.
Is there any fighting games you guys have enjoyed? And I'm not just talking from a multiplayer experience, because I feel like you're really holding on to a multiplayer kind of view there, but like, is there any fighting games you guys have enjoyed and put a tangible amount of time in over your kind of gaming history?
One of the Dragon Balls, and I can't remember which one it is. It's like Raging something, maybe?
Raging Blast, yeah. Raging Blast 2 or something, yeah.
Yeah, I put a fair few hours into kind of the game, or the AI version of that.
I've played every Dragon Ball Z game, to my shame, but there you go. That's maybe a different episode. Paddy, how about you? Like, is there any genuine fighting games you've really tipped your time into, or is it just really never grabbed you?
No, a bit of Smash Brothers, but like, no, it's not. It's just not. It's not my thing. Yeah. I mean, the skill gap's incredible. Like the range of abilities, how well people can play it. Like, even watching it doesn't really interest me. It's just not. It's not my bag.
It's not your thing. That's what I think. For me, I'm relatively similar to you, but I have had enjoyable experiences out of fighting games. I really got into Soul Calibur on the Dreamcast when that came out, and I really got into the nuances of all the different combos and really kind of got really good at that game. And but obviously this was the day before online competitions. This was me putting it on the very hardest setting and giving myself a kind of one hit point and seeing if I can clear the whole game. That was my way to stretch my skill. And I think there's been ones that have been really good over the years and really. But I know, weirdly enough, you bring out a Dragon Ball kind of Fighter Z. I did a few streams on that, fighting people online, and that. From my point of view, and I know you guys watched a couple of those streams. I don't think I ever felt so tense playing a game against one other person.
1v1.
Yeah.
It's just a 1v1 kind of fight. When I never professed I was an expert at that game, but at least I could hold my own. I knew what I was doing, sort of, to an extent. I could pull together a few combos, and I knew the essence of kind of block defending, kind of like the rock paper scissors approach that it kind of has to it. And I think once you can get to that bar, there's no experience quite like it, like to really have that. I think maybe games like kind of FIFA and maybe stuff like that, where it's just you and one other person for like 20 minutes kind of grabbing lumps out of each other. And I think there's something to be said for that. And I know that's not something we can really go into because none of us are really experts in that genre and it's not really our thing. But I think we all can kind of recognise that there's some brilliant people who can pull off some amazing stuff in those games, and it is to be admired. And I think there's a lot of hard-working people in the gaming space who do a lot of very creative and very clever things in a world that we don't understand.
Yeah, like when you watch the people who know the game inside and out and do know these moves, like, and can reel off back to back. Watching them is incredible.
Like a pro like Smash Bros, a Smash Brothers game, like things like that. Like I watch them with an admiration of going, bloody hell, like I think I watched a Mortal Kombat esport match when I was at one of the Insomnia kind of gaming festivals once, and although I know really nothing about the intricacies of Mortal Kombat, when it comes to watching esport, which I'm not really into because I don't really understand a kind of League of Legends and kind of MOBA and stuff like that, and I don't really get the appeal, but I can understand two people standing side by side taking kind of lumbers at each other and who's kind of winning by the fact I've got two big health bars at the top. Like that's a real easy kind of spectator sport. I think we couldn't do this entire podcast if we didn't at least kind of mention kind of fighting games in some way. But yeah, let's not go into it too much because it's not really an area that a kind of any of us really kind of get into.
We just end up pissing people off.
So on our little list of things to talk about, I did have here on the list that we're going to try and make a perfect a combat game. But I think through recording this, the reason why I never took us down this road, guys, is because I think what we isolated probably about midway through like the show, kind of through the episode, is that the reality there probably is no perfect combat system because it depends in reality in terms of what endorphin are you trying to hit? What part of the brain are you trying to hit? What are you trying to appeal to? We talk about this kind of a Soulsborne, skill-based, real-time, kind of a rewards-based experience versus the autonomy of freedom of choice and different approaches like we talked about with Far Cry and we talked about with Usurp is your example when it comes to a kind of Dishonored and stuff. And then, my example of like just something that just feels great and makes you just feel a bit, a bit, I suppose, cathartic. You just go there, not really have to put a lot of brain power to it, and just have a good time. And I think because of all that and because there are different things, when we set ourselves the challenge to go, let's talk about what our perfect kind of combat game is. I think it really depends on who you ask.
Yeah,
because it's a lot of things. I feel like we'll probably be kind of waste a lot of time if we started taking people kind of down that route. So that's why I didn't really go down it. I thought actually, you know what, we're probably better just talking about what we concentrate as things that we enjoy and what we constitute as things we kind of do not enjoy in combat. And I think we're really isolated as well that, because combat is bad doesn't mean that a game is bad. That a game is a mixture of a lot of things and the combat is one part of it.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to serve an example of a combat system that ruined the game for me. I don't think that's one we've actually surfaced up yet. And that for me was Shenmue 3.
I was going to ask you about the Shenmue series.
Shenmue 3. So that was one of them where a lot of disappointing things about Shenmue, and it's one of the games we covered quite a lot on the YouTube channel. And weirdly enough, one of our other more popular videos we did was talking about what is Shenmue 3 going to be. You know what I mean? Like, is it going to be like? And I know it's not a series you guys are particularly into, but obviously, you see my guys kind of stream it, and it come out originally as the kind of genesis, if you will, of Shenmue was a RPG for like Virtua Fighter. So if you remember the very first kind of 3D kind of fighting game that ever come out in, I believe, the early 90s, early to mid 90s, on the PlayStation 1. It was supposed to, it was actually an arcade game before that, but it was supposed to be that, and so it had its roots in that. So when it come out on the Dreamcast, the combat system was based on an adapted kind of Virtua Fighter kind of system. So it was very much, kind of this button's kick, this button's punch, and doing a series of combos and a series of throws to put them together, which is all great. And then obviously Shenmue 3 come out, and like the guy who made it tried to come out with this really strange system where he tried to make it more accessible, but in trying to make it more accessible, he just made it more harder because you didn't know what you're doing, because anytime you press like your button, nothing seemed to happen, and it was all kind of very kind of rhythmic and stuff. It was a series of kind of single kind of button inputs, and the two characters would do it. It felt almost kind of turn-based, but it wasn't. It was the strangest mechanics that I could ever put on it, and to see that happen to a game that's like I've cherished for such a long time was really depressing to go through, especially since, a story that hasn't progressed in over 18 years, they made no progression with at all. They just kind of floundered around in circles. You had a character who could in the first game beat up kind of 70 people, and in the second game learnt lots of kind of lessons and beat up all these people with all this great combat system. All of a sudden, can't beat up 2 guys. And it just makes no fucking sense, the whole thing, and it made me very, very sad.
Yeah, I bet it did, because you were excited for that.
I was excited that it was going to get some closure, and I thought, you know what? And even I think even if the story was blinding and they gave me so much closure on all that, I think the combat system as it was still would have really soured me in the way that The Witcher 3 kind of didn't, because it was so bad for a game that's intrinsically about martial arts and fighting and different forms and different styles, to just be like this, what feels like someone just kind of just added a shit on their hand and smeared it on the wall and go, there you go, I've done it. Which I know is a big disrespect to Yu Suzuki, and let's give the guy some credit. He is a cult favorite kind of game developer, but he hasn't made a game in 20 years. So, you know, maybe give the guy a bit of kind of license, a bit of room to be like, well, actually, you know what was I expecting? But what I expected was probably something that was quite similar to before, and that's not what I got. Have you guys ever been through that? Have you guys ever, like, you know, had genuine excitement for a game, or even something that you quite liked the look of, and then boot it up, and just the way it handled, the way it felt was just so bad, you just had to turn it off? And I feel like maybe, Paddy, that's where you got a little bit with kind of Tears of the Kingdom a little bit.
I mean, I haven't. That's not why I stopped playing. It's just, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just no time to do anything really. I think it's not so much the combat, I guess, but it's kind of linked. So I mean, for me, Far Cry 5 just was, you know, okay, one, it was more of the same, but somehow it kind of felt off, and then every now and again,
I really struggled with it.
Yeah, every now and again they just sort of pull you out of whatever you're doing, and just like, I've done something in the story where now I've been passed out, and the outpost I was about to take down, I guess I'll do that later, because you know, you've taken away my freedom. So that is kind of like, it's a gameplay thing, I guess, more than a combat thing. But it just, everything in that game sort of felt a bit loose and not what you'd expect from a Far Cry. That's why I haven't even like tried 6. Like, it's just, you know.
Yeah, I tried 6 because it come up on PlayStation Extra, but I played it for like 10 minutes and I realised that I got more important things to do in my life, so I didn't play it anymore. But how about you? You got any genuine like examples of like a game you've gone into thinking, oh, this would be great, and then the combat systems really turned you off and be like, nah, I'm alright?
I've got a couple of different examples. I think one we've already mentioned, and that was Outlanders. That game, I kind of came in when we first started playing it. I was like, this is amazing. Kind of, I love the multiplayer aspect of it. I love we all had different roles, so we were kind of playing in completely different ways, building different systems and weaponry. And then it just got too tanky.
Yeah,
I was fighting kind of a boss one-on-one whilst like you were dealing with something else, and I was just putting specials and moves and emptying every bit of ammunition I had into them, and the bar was half done. I was like, this is going to take me hours. And even 2 of us of just circling and putting too much time into just not even
and there's no skill involved in it, is there? It's just running random in circles. Well, so I've got a bit of damage, so I'll do a bit of healing.
And so I kind of got a bit bored of that, and then we just faded away. And the other one.
And what else was there to that game apart from like combat? You know what I mean? If you're not going to make it if you're not going to make your combat system kind of fun, then why am I going to play you? You know?
Yeah, and the other one, which I haven't played in a number of years, and I do want to get back into, but it's kind of one of the reasons I find it difficult, and it's not the actual shooting mechanics, it's everything around the combat systems, is Destiny, or Destiny 2.
Okay. I can't speak to that because I've never played it.
I do enjoy the combat mechanic. It is a bit of another tanky one, but I think it does it right. Of if you have the right weaponry, the right like if you had Void or Arc or the different elemental weaponry, you could go through the bosses a lot quicker, or the tanky ones a lot quicker. So it kind of is, you build your sets of weapons and you kind of rotate them through. But it was one of those where you sort of ran out of things to do. You repeated the same combat systems over and over again, the same missions, doing the same things in the same way. So you got bored, you left it for a bit. When you came back, everything had changed. There was now different meanings to different weapons. different elements to how you upgrade the armor and how you merge weaponries and different, like you can attach different bits to it. And I was like, the combat mechanic went from a fairly simple but well done thing to one where it was a bit more refined and had a bit more element to it, to now this is too complicated, I don't understand it, everything I've done before means nothing because all these weapons are redundant and awful again. So you kind of have to keep constantly playing it, but it eventually get to that point where it feels stale.
Yeah. And then that's when you start to drift away, isn't it? Because
and then when
it's not giving you that kick anymore.
Yeah, and then you come back and it's all different again. You kind of, every time you go back, you lose a bit more love for the combat system.
Have you guys ever tried to play on any of the Dragon Age games? I remember I tried to play on that and the combat was so...
yeah, actually, I did. I tried to play Dragon Age 3 and then I got to my first combat encounter and I was like,
Nope. Yeah, I did the same. And maybe that's really... maybe that is, from what we talked about before, kind of, Paddy, where we've said, like, the kind of visceral aspect of it has a layer of importance. To me, I need to feel the impact. I need to feel the impact of the fight. And when I played, and probably that's why I don't get too much out of kind of turn-based kind of systems and stuff like that, but like a Dragon Age, when I tried to play that and I stood next to the enemy I had to fight, and then my guy started swinging a sword in a rhythmic thing and the hit points started coming off, I was a bit like, nah, I'm alright.
Yeah, no, 100%.
And I know it's got a lot of fans, and I know that's probably, if anyone ever gets an hour and a half through this podcast and is a diehard kind of Dragon Age fan, I'm not even sorry.
What are you still doing, you loser?
What are you doing here?
We've already sucked them in.
Yeah, you've already been this far down the rabbit hole, like you might as well fucking see it through now. But yeah, like I think for me, Dragon Age is one that a game I picked up going, God, this sounds cool. God, this character system is cool. God, it's really in depth. I'm going to be really into this. And the moment I got in a combat fight, within kind of 5 minutes, I turned it off. I'm like, nah, I'm alright.
Yep, I did exactly the same.
Yeah. So I know it's quite hard to service them, isn't it? Because obviously it's easy to talk about games that you played on a lot because you clearly remember them, but it's very hard to remember the games that you didn't play on a lot.
Yeah.
I've tried with Monster Hunter a few times.
We did that at Last Insomnia, and
I struggled with that a little bit. I feel like it could be good, but it feels very clunky and very non-responsive.
Yeah, I think we just needed to learn that game a bit better. We kind of it just didn't feel right.
Yeah, it did feel a bit clunky and non-responsive. Well, guys, it's been about the same amount of time we spent talking about Spider-Man, hour and 40 minutes, about a movie length of us talking about video games and such. I think we've covered a lot of ground, talked about a lot of good games, a few bad ones, a few kind of all-right ones. And yeah, we got to talk about Ghost of Tsushima, which I think, when I reflect back on this podcast, I think that's the one that stands out to me as, that is for me, if we're going to talk about what is the gold standard when it comes to combat, what is my number one combat system in all of games, then I'm going to put my hat in the ring and I'm going to say Ghost of Tsushima. And thank you so much, Paddy, for reminding me that game exists, because I'm probably going to replay it. But I'm going to wrap this podcast up, I'm going to put you guys on the spot and ask you guys the same question, which I know you've kind of loosely answered based on gunplay and melee, but now you've given it more time to think. We've talked a lot more about this. Where do you guys sit? What is for you guys now the gold standard? What is the best game that's got a combat mechanics? I'll start with you, Paddy. Do you want to wrap up with yours?
Yeah, I mean,
it could be the same. It could be the same answer that given. That's fine.
I mean, it's sort of hard to look past Elden Ring, really. Just for the amazing amount of flexibility that game gives you. Other than that, maybe Little Big Planet.
Yeah. Why not? Is that
game with no combat at all?
Al, go on, mate. Kind of wrap us up. What is the best ever combat mechanic of the games?
Gunplay's still got to be Titanfall 2, Melee. Agree with Paddy. Elden Ring.
I'm gonna have to get you to choose one. Yeah, another one.
Titanfall 2.
Titanfall 2. So those are the 3 games: Titanfall 2, Elden Ring, and the one I said. Right, guys. Well, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Bards Tavern. If you tune back in kind of 18 months' time, you should expect the third episode as well.
We'll be there.
We'll be there, but we've made a loose promise to make a bit more effort. I think we enjoy doing this, and we think we're going to come back to doing this maybe on a monthly basis. But I know we've made kind of very loose promises before and never deliver on them. So as far as I can see, you can all go fuck yourself. So with that, with that, guys, thank you so much for tuning in today, and we'll catch you guys on the flipping flop, I suppose. All right, guys. Cheers.
Wow. See ya.
Bye.